don't we have a drink with the Wurzels, because they at the moment are going to give us a nice half pint of that lovely scrumpy that they call cider.
I am a cider drinker. I drinks it all on the day.
Once upon a time, it was perceived that your average cider drinker was somewhat, well, unsophisticated.
Proper job, young'un!
These days, it's all different. Connoisseurs even go to class to learn the fine art of cider tasting.
So now you can have a taste, so have a good slurp. Chew it around a bit. And just let it settle on the palate.
It's tannins, it's dryness, it's sugars.
There are so many varieties and there are so many flavours and there's so many subtleties.
It's the varieties, it's the styles.
It's quite interesting how there's so much different taste and so much different variety within the cider.
I can sort of learn about this new drink I'd never appreciated before. And there's all this information, there's lots of nerdy stuff on the internet.
Every single cider is different. Even from the same make, it'll be different. Every barrel will be different.
And it wasn't just the experts. Down at the packed cider bar, everyone was giving their taste buds a treat.
It's just refreshing. It's a nice drink. I'm not a massive fan of beer, so...
No, we're just trying to go from number 1 to number 7 on the list.
Number 1 was good. Tasted a pear.
It's better than beer.
Hang on a minute. This is the Great British Beer Festival, and it's run by the Campaign for Real Ale. What's going on? Why are real cider and perry now so popular? To find out, I'm meeting up with a cider producer from Camera, Simon Reed. Camera's quite old. Cider is much, much older, but yet it seems to be a part of beer and real ale that isn't always talked about.
Probably a best-kept secret is the best way of describing it. For over 25 years, Camera's already been campaigning for real cider and perries. And here at Olympia, we're celebrating that milestone mark. But it is true that a lot of people just associate Camera with beer, but perhaps as we can explain, there's been a lot more going on behind the scenes than people imagine.
It seems that people are finally taking cider much more seriously. They're looking at it, they're holding up to the light, they're going for the nose, the depth of flavour, the characters. This is something fairly new, isn't it?
In that sense, yes. We did start to see the remarketing of cider, and that, of course, has increased dramatically the interest in small cider producers around the country. I think the figure for Camera at the moment in terms of microbreweries is something like 1,000. We have over 1,000 microbreweries. But what is probably not so well known is that we've absolutely got over 1,000, 1,200 cider producers, many of whom are very small. There are now becoming an increasing number that I would say have stepped up to the plate, become a little larger, are supplying their local regional area with cider, but are also starting to supply the national festivals of Camera and others, and also to supply pubs on a bigger basis.
I noticed that we're starting to see hand pumps on the cider bar. This is something we've only previously seen on the beer bar, so is this another change that's happening?
There are obviously still pubs who will serve the traditional pulley pin, the plastic barrel, which you're probably familiar with in a lot of the pubs. They tend to be on the bar, or sometimes they can be put in the fridge, but they're not quite the ideal size to manage. So I think that these small increases in the technology are making a big difference to pubs, and are making a big difference for the capability for customers to come into a pub, see a hand pump and get it delivered as they would expect now from real ale.
You're actually a cider producer. People are quite surprised at the difference between real cider, what they call real cider here, and the stuff you often get in pubs or the stuff you get in tins. It's quite different. I mean, what's the ingredients in real cider?
Well, I can do that very simply. Apples or pears. There is a legal definition of cider, but I think for all intents and purposes we can forget that. The skill is then in blending the different apples and or pears that you've got with that combination of sweetness and acidity. You know, if you eat an apple, you get that sweet, but you also get that tartness coming through as well. And that balance of acids, tannins, sweetness is effectively what makes the vast difference in the number of ciders and perries. Here at the GBBF we've got something like 58 different ciders and something like 24 perries represented. They have a vast different range of tastes which are reflected in those different apples.
There are 2 or 3 main big well-known cider brands, mass market cider brands, who spend quite a lot on advertising. Is this reflected in what we're seeing here? So people start off on that sort of cider and then they're gradually, if you like, weaned onto something with a bit more character?
Undoubtedly them spending 50, 60 million as an industry marketing cider has had those push-on effects for the smaller producers. I think most pubs appreciate that virtually they'll have a keg beer, they'll have a lager, and they'll have a real ale. These can all exist in harmony. So I think each can learn from the other.
But the bottom line is the Wurzel's image of cider is something very much of the past now.
Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing a whole range of different ages, sexes drinking cider. It isn't the gap tooth, the ruddy nose and the straw hat. You know, this festival here and many others reflect that change across the entire spectrum of social drinking.
Okay, Simon, thank you very much and cheers.
I am a cider drinker.